week 5 of the 17th series of Maternity Midwifery Hour. And I'm delighted to welcome this evening Lauren Petrie, who's with us. And there she
Hi,
is.
Sue.
Hi, and welcome. And thank you so much for coming this evening. Because I know this week is the busiest of the year for you in all the things that you'll be doing. And I know you'll be sharing some of that this evening.
I will.
Thank you very much. But we always put our guest on the spot and ask them to share with us a moment of the week. And I know yours is a bit special. So please share.
Yes, my moment is very special, and it's a little shout out to my team at work for saving me, as so many of them do. I, like many bereavement midwives around the country, was holding celebrations for BLAW this week, Baby Loss Awareness Week. And I was sitting there in the office during the week, and I was saying, we need to do this raffle. We need to get really good prizes, get everybody involved, and really want to buy tickets. And the only prize I had was my mum offering to buy a tin of biscuits. And I thought, Mum, we were aiming higher than a tin of biscuits. And so my team kind of rallied around and found donations and offered things themselves. And so that was my moment of the week of like gratitude and really being grateful for something and for people around me. So that's my moment.
Oh, wow. And isn't it wonderful when you have a team like that?
Yeah, it
Well,
makes all the
but of
difference.
course, I wonder why it's a team like that, Lauren.
Midwives?
Yes. Lots of midwives together. Oh, fantastic. And lots of prizes. And the draw was today.
It was.
No, audience, you've missed out on this
Sorry,
occasion.
we'll plan better for next year.
Yay.
We'll draw at 8 o'clock instead.
Oh, fabulous. That would be good. That's a date for next year. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
sharing. Now, I'm just going to
thank
just
you.
welcome our new people because I know we have had about 100 odd people, new people tonight. And I know we've got our old friends and welcome to you all. Please tell us where you're coming from because that's always really interesting for us to know. And I know Paul's at the end in the chat box kind of sending things through to me about where people are and what sort of questions you have. And if you have any questions for Lauren, just pop them in the chat box and they'll come through at the end of the program as per usual. Just wanted to kind of celebrate really. I said at the beginning, this is series 17 and this is the 5th year of doing the Maternity and Midwifery Hour. And for those of you who've been here from the start, you'll know when we started, when we were born, was at the first COVID UK lockdown, which was a very scary time and a time when midwives and student midwives and anyone working within any acute health setting had to be focused on COVID. We weren't allowed to go out to study days, conferences, festivals, whatever. It was all focused on the moment at that time. And there was a huge thirst for knowledge and also to connect with people. So we thought we'd start this maternity and midwifery hour. And the first time was, like I said, 5 years ago. And we looked at caring for ourselves and caring for each other initially. And then we were looking a lot about COVID and about the service changes that are going on for students, for midwives, for women and babies and families. And we've carried on. And you seem to like us quite a lot, which is lovely for us. And we keep recording. Now, this is something very special about Maternity Midwifery Forum, if you didn't know. All of our hours and all of our festivals are recorded. So if you miss anything, you can catch up. And so if you have a power cut tonight, don't panic. You'll be able to catch up because you'll get the link to the recording and you'll be able to watch again. But also you can check out on Netflix, which is on your resources sheet, which is with this, which Paul is sharing this evening. Or you can, if you're lucky, and if you're in with a university which has a subscription, easy peasy, you just go in on the Netflix subscription. Or some maternity units I know also have this connection. Or you can have a subscription for a price of a cup of coffee or whatever every week, and you just access it. And I have to say, it's a little bit addictive because you can go in deciding, oh, I've got to do this assignment or I've got to do a project or whatever, especially the students I know. Or for your revalidation, very good if you're a midwife approaching revalidation. You go in for one topic, and it's lovely, I think, to see someone talking about a piece of research or practice change. It becomes alive then, and you can think, well, we could do that here, or I can make sense of this and learn from it. And that's really good, a really good way of learning. And the other thing is, I should say, is we love you to share. So do share this evening with your colleagues because people are working, can't always get to these things. And you're going to learn new things. You're going to learn things that might be a bit challenging, a bit uncomfortable, a bit sad, but they're really important for you to know to help women and babies and your colleagues, actually, because and we're talking about baby loss this evening, whenever there's a loss, it's not just the family, it's also the team that feel it as well. And we need to look after each other as well as look after the mothers and their babies and families and friends. So you can share all of that and please do and take an opportunity. And I personally find that's a really good way because if I talk to people about what I've learned and what I've been absorbing or watching, it helps cement it in my brain. It's much good. That's good things. So also at this point, and I used to say this and I sometimes forget to say it, but please look after yourselves because I know it's a busy time. We're coming in the winter time. I'm feeling, that this now the season affective disorder, this thing that when it gets dark and dreary, you can feel your mood drop quite a lot. And you also, everybody around you, or everyone around me seems to be coughing and sneezing and got tissues at the plenty. I've got my own, but I don't need it at the moment. So there's a lot of bugs going on, and you need to look after yourselves. If you're due a flu jab, go and get it. If you're due a COVID jab, go and get it. I'm a great proponent of vaccinations because we need to keep healthy and well for ourselves as well as our families and friends and obviously the people we're caring for. Now, a little news flash. Well, the news began this week, began internationally with a ceasefire in Gaza, and that has to be good news. And some of the release of some of the hostages from Israel and from Palestine, from Gaza themselves. And we really have to pray for continuing peace because this is only the beginning. And it's been a really difficult time, I think, especially for Gazans and for Israelis, really difficult time. So that was good news. So, and really this evening, we're focusing a lot because today is the last day of Baby Loss Awareness Week. And the day you'll note in your locality, maybe, and if you're in a city or a town, you might notice people are lighting up in blue and pink in towers and lighthouses. If you're in a city, it won't be a lighthouse, but if you're by the sea, it will be. In honor of the lost babies and their families. And at 7 o'clock, we will have the white wave of light. Now, I've got a little candle in on my bookshelf. You can see second shelf down. It's a little bit dim, but it's still lit. And you'll notice Lauren, she's got more than one, I have to tell you. But she would do because she's leading on this. Um, and this is for all the babies in the wave of light. And I think one of the tweets, I've been looking at tweets quite a lot this week. And one of the things that struck me is someone said, parents don't just remember their babies on this night, because if they've lost their babies, that loss is with them all of the time. And I think we need to remember that because it doesn't go away. But this is to kind of honor those babies and the loss and remember the things that we need to take on board. And then another tweet that hit me was from SANS, Loss and Bereavement for Parents, which was say their name, because of course some parents might have had their babies a long time ago, or they might have been very small, might have miscarried babies, and may not have been suggested that you can give your baby a name. And I know some parents automatically, call their baby something right at the beginning of pregnancy, but others, it doesn't seem quite right until the baby's born. But I think that really had resonance with me as well, because when you can name that little individual, that becomes a real little person that you've lost. I think it's really important. And there was a report that's also on your list about interpreting provision in maternity services, including sign language and different languages. And really, I talked a little bit about a couple of weeks ago, but it's really important. This isn't luxury. This is a real need for all of the women and families we're serving, making sure they've got some interpretation and making sure we're kind of conduit to it. So I've been galloping because I want to get to the whole subject of this evening, which is we're looking at loss and bereavement in pregnancy and childbirth, including the special role that midwives hold. And I think you'll see when Lauren's speaking of the special role we can have. And I'm really so delighted. I'm really grateful to Lauren because I know this is a really busy week for anyone who's working and leading on loss and bereavement in maternity care. And Lauren, who is a bereavement midwife at Imperial College Healthcare NHS Trust, she's mother to Mia and her angel baby Jada. Hope I've pronounced that correctly. She's nodding at me. It's okay. Jada. And following Jada's stillbirth in 2013, Lauren worked closely with Imperial Sands, Best Beginnings, the DOH, NHSE, and the London Clinical Network to improve maternity bereavement care standards. She started her midwifery degree at 2015 at King's, and she saw quickly a gap in education of midwifery students and developed a bereavement training package, which she continues to teach at King's. Lauren has worked in midwifery managerial roles, but she's recently found her way back to bereavement care, which is where she feels she can make the most difference. So welcome, Lauren. The screen is now yours, and thank you so much for coming this evening.
Thank you, Sue. Yes, so just as you said, this is my light, this is my candle, everybody, burning bright in the background. I've got two. So this one is for all the families that I care for and the babies that are really, really missed. And this one here, you can't really see, but it's a pink rose quartz, pink for a girl, pink for my daughter Jada. And so I have two, and anybody who knows about rose quartz knows that it's the crystal of love. And you'll feel, I think you'll feel it from me, and you'll definitely hear it in my story. It's so important for me that anytime I talk about Jada, anybody that talks about her, anybody that thinks about her, I want that to be with love. I want it to be led with love and to be her memory being left with love as well. So that's why I have rose quartz. It's my favorite color as well. So yes, as Sue said, my name's Lauren. Thank you, Sue, for inviting me to talk to you all this evening, to everybody around the world, because I know we have listeners everywhere. I am a bereavement midwife, but I am first a bereaved mum, and I'll tell you a little bit about my story. So I have had two daughters, Mia, who is 19 years old and has left me to go to university, and then Jada. And Jada was my second child. I had a low-risk pregnancy. I didn't think anything was going to go wrong. I kind of just went through the motions, took all the advice that I was given. I was really, really excited about having her. I had made plans, I guess, for my delivery because I'd had an emergency section with Mia, and I didn't really want to go through that again. It was horrible. But you know, I wanted to try for natural labour. I did that. And then we got to the end and I just said, I really don't want to be induced. It didn't end well the last time. I just want to feel like I've got a bit more control this time. And so I wanted to have an elective section, which was booked in for 41 weeks. So the day before I was having my pre-op assessment at midday, 2 o'clock midday it was. And Mia had said to me, Mum, please don't have my sister until I've had my Easter assembly. And so the Easter assembly was the priority. I went along, I did my bit. I knew I had to then go home, get all the sheets washed, pack my bag, go off for my appointment because I knew the next day I was going in for the section. And in the Easter assembly, my contractions started. And I thought, oh, this is pretty bad timing, but this assembly is nearly finished. I can get through this and then I can get off to the hospital. But then the contractions kind of kept coming, and I'd obviously been in labour with Mia, and I knew that it didn't really feel right. They were coming quite often, not lasting for very long, but I just knew something inside me said something isn't right. I called my sister and she said, I think you should just go to the hospital early. I know your appointment's in the afternoon, but just go now. I said, yeah. I just need to quickly go home. I just need to go and get a few bits, drop some things off. You know, I'm running errands. So I'm thinking, if I do have to stay in, I need to have done other things, which is typical of mums to think that and do that. And I'm not thinking that anything's seriously wrong because I'd felt her moving that morning. And so I went off, did what I needed to do, got to the hospital about an hour later, went into triage. And I said, my contractions have started, but I'm due to have a section tomorrow. So I'm just coming to make sure that everything's okay because I'm not sure that contractions feel right. So the first sonicade, and we can't find the fetal heart. Second sonicade, sorry, I might sometimes say baby, sometimes fetal. It's the midwife in me. Couldn't find her heartbeat. The second sonicade, and it was the same thing. And at that point, I just thought, okay, I'm 41 weeks. If there is something wrong, let's just do something quickly. Get me upstairs to theatre. Let's do the section. Let's not waste any time. And I felt like we were wasting time in that moment because they weren't able to find her heartbeat, but we weren't really going anywhere. And then the doctor came in and said, we need to do a scan. And as a midwife, I now know it can be positional. It might be that she was in a funny position and we couldn't find the heartbeat. I didn't know that at the time. I wasn't a midwife at the time. So we went up to the second floor and it felt like literally 5 seconds. The sonographer put the scanner onto me and immediately said, I'm really sorry, your baby's died. And in my head, I thought, how can you tell that quickly? How can it take you 5 seconds to tell me that? And it was a real delayed reaction. I felt like my body was in the room, but my mind was still looking out of the window thinking something must be okay to fix kind of thing. And then I was on my own at the time and I called my mum because she was literally around the corner and she came and I said, I really, really don't want to give birth. I said I wanted to have a section. I still want to have a section. And they said to me, well, we wouldn't advise it. You know, as we do, we're talking about risk of surgery. And they did say, you know, the scar is going to be a reminder to you. And in that moment, I thought, first of all, I've already got a scar from Mia, so that doesn't make any difference to me. And secondly, my baby has just died at 41 weeks. I don't need this. I'm not going to need a scar to remind me of that every day. Trust me, I'm going to be remembering this. And that felt quite almost patronizing and not really understanding of the situation. And so we spoke it through and I said, okay, you know, they were really, really trying to not convince, I don't want to use the word convince, but to go through all the risks with me. And it did make sense to have a vaginal birth. I wouldn't have had to have the prolonged hospital stay. There were the risk of surgery, having to have a catheter, all those other things that come along with it. And in that moment, I was thinking about Mia and then wanting to get home to her as quickly as possible. So because I was already labouring, I went up to the labour ward and we tried to do an epidural. I've got really, really bad discs in my back. And so it took 5 attempts to get the epidural in, and literally 5, that isn't an exaggeration. I then had some Syntocin on, I went into labour. And it's really important when I'm teaching this, whenever I'm teaching a bereavement session, I'm always teaching from the parent's perspective. I'm telling my story as a parent, and then I'm saying to the midwife, and in this moment as a midwife, this is what you can do. This is what you should be doing according to guidance. This is what you can do to help a mum. And in that moment, I really felt like I was flitting in between moments of thinking, I'm in labour and I'm having a baby, because I was contracting and I could feel it. And I thought, I know what this is. This is labour. And then there's be this kind of stark slap in the face that felt like, actually, no, because they're not monitoring her. And in that moment, you just remember that actually she's died. And that was really, really hard. And that confusion, I think, lasted for weeks, which I'll get to later down the line. And so I laboured overnight. And then it came to the point of second stage and I was about to start pushing. And I said to the midwife, I really, really don't want any doctors in the room. I want it to just be me, her dad, and the midwife. I wanted it to be quiet and calm. I didn't want to have anybody extra in the room. I didn't want to have the bright lights. I didn't want to have any intervention. I just felt like if this is going to happen now, it has to happen my way. And I was really, really scared. And midwives will often say to me, you know, in that second stage, how do you communicate with the woman? When we have a live birth, it's quite animated and it's excited and it can be calm and lovely and peaceful as well. But often it's like, come on, you're there, you're doing it, keep going, keep going. And actually, what I say to them is, it's the same vocabulary, it's just said in a different way. Come on, Lauren, you're nearly there, keep going. I can see your baby's head, you're doing really, really well. You're saying the same words, but you're saying it in a calmer, just calmer kind of way. So you're still motivating somebody. And that was really important because in that moment, I lost motivation. I remember being on all fours over the back of the bed. And I just said, I just stopped and I said, I can't do this. I can't do this knowing what's about to happen. I feel like I'm going to go through all this and all this pain pushing for what end and for what I don't have any prides at the end of it. I just don't want to do this anymore. And I gave up. And my midwife was amazing. I actually work with her now. I work with all the people that looked after me. And she said to me, you can do this, but I have to tell you that if we don't carry on and we don't progress, I am going to have to call the doctors in, which she was right to say, because that is the situation. But I think she also knew that that was what I didn't want to hear and what I needed to hear to make me kind of get back in the room and get focused, which I did. And then I continued to push, and Jada was born. And I really feel like in that moment I wasn't prepared. And I don't know if any parent really can be prepared, because I was on the bed, and anybody that's given birth will know that when you've given birth, you're like, oh, I'm done, I'm spent. But I literally scrambled to the top of the bed. I don't know where that came from. It was all adrenaline, but I was so scared by what I saw, because she was big baby. She was over 3 kg, 8 pounds something, really, really big, chunky thighs, biggest thighs I've ever seen on a baby. But she just wasn't moving and she was silent. And it was shocking to me. It was shocking. And I'd already had the conversations with the midwife about, do I want to hold her? Do I want to see her? Yes, I want to do all those things. And she looked at me and she said, your baby is beautiful and she is your baby and she's always going to be your baby. And I said, yeah, give me my baby. And from that moment, I held her for literally 10 hours. We stayed in the room together. She was lying in the bed next to me. And it was really kind of an out of body experience almost. There were moments when, and I'm sorry this is upsetting to anybody, there was a moment when the little trickle of blood just came down her nose. And instead of it shocking me, it was almost like I saw it as if it was just snot. And I just said to her dad, oh, babe, just wipe that away. And in anybody else, they would find that quite shocking. But the level of confusion that I was in, I didn't see it as blood. I can't explain it any other way. And so she stayed with me in the room, and we only had 2 pictures, which now is completely different. There's an amazing charity called Remember My Baby, which is in most maternity hospitals in the UK. And they take remembrance photography of babies, which is just amazing. If you have a chance, please look at their website. I didn't have that opportunity. Was given 2 pictures of her, which were taken 10 hours later. And she was very puffy, quite purple, and her lips had changed colour by that time. And she'd kind of got into that usual, babies will kind of, their face will open up and they'll be looking like that, which isn't the way that I remembered her. I do have 2 other pictures that I instinctively took when she was born. And I'm so grateful that I did that in that moment, because otherwise I wouldn't have had any memory of her in that moment. She stayed with me in the bed. The doctors came in, which at the time wasn't great. And they were talking about postmortems. And I think the way it was done wasn't really optimal for me in terms of my experience. I agreed to have a full postmortem. That's what I wanted to have for her, because this has come out of nowhere. And I thought, I really need to know why this has happened. So we did a full postmortem. I went home. I went off to my sister's house for a few days because I just needed to feel like I needed to get away. I was coming back to my house that had her cot, everything, her room was completely done. And I just thought, I don't know if I can live in that. I came back home, I packed a bag and I went off to Cambridge to my sister's. And the next day I got a call from the community midwife saying, oh, yeah, I need to come and check you and your baby. And I just thought, I had a baby? Like, where is my baby? That confusion came straight back in again. And then she said, oh, no, I'm sorry. I need to come and check you. And I said, okay. And again, it's these moments of just these daggers in the heart that you feel the aftermath of it all. We went home, and I had, which a lot of parents do experience, of, you know, not everybody finds out that this has happened to us. You're walking in and you go into Tesco's and you see somebody that doesn't know, and they're like, oh gosh, where's your baby? And you're in that moment, it's really, really difficult because you don't really want to put that burden onto somebody else. I was so conscious of feeling like I don't want to give my sadness to anybody else. I felt so responsible for other people's feelings. And it's something that I say to the parents that I look after now: please be kind to yourself and talk about it if you want to talk about it. And if in that moment you don't want to, you just say, I just don't want to talk about it right now. But I always felt like I couldn't say that. I felt like I had to give them an answer, and the answer I didn't have. So we fast forward to where I was meeting with the consultant to talk about the results of the postmortem. And up to that point when I walked in the door, I needed to know an answer, and she knew that I needed to know. And I walked in and it was an inconclusive result. And they'd done every single test you could imagine on me to try and find out a reason. And in that moment, I remember I literally sat back in the chair and I just said, you know, that's actually the best thing you could have told me. And I've only just realized it in this moment, because if you'd said there was a problem with her heart and we missed it on a scan, or there was something that I missed or the midwife missed, I would be having to live with anger and wanting to blame somebody. And I didn't want to have that heaviness. And I only realized that in that moment, that actually I can now live having only memories of love for her rather than memories of anger and upset and blame. And I think that would have eaten me up. I had counselling with a private counsellor at the time. She had been volunteering at the hospital. We now have Petals, which is just amazing, an amazing charity founded by Karen Burgess, who I absolutely love. And that counselling is for parents and for midwives, any staff that's involved in bereavement care, if you're in the UK. So I had my counselling sessions, and I felt, you know, I don't want to say coming out the other side, because I don't think you do. I think your life just changes. But I realised that not only was I grieving for Jada, I was grieving for the person that I was before I lost her. And it's something that's really underestimated, and something that I urge anybody doing bereavement care to really pay attention to, for the parents, and supporting them with that. Because I didn't laugh at the same things. I didn't want to have the same conversations. I found those conversations really irrelevant. Whereas the week before, I would have loved talking about a reality show or something like that. And in that moment, I just thought, no, this is not important. And when I spoke to a mum last week, she said exactly the same thing. And we spoke about giving yourself a bit of grace and time to let everything process. And that doesn't happen very quickly. One of the most important things that I tell parents is never to set yourself an expectation of, in 2 years' time, I'll be feeling different. In 2 years' time, I'll be able to have those conversations. Because when 2 years comes around and you don't feel like that, it is devastating, because you feel like, again, I've kind of failed, because why aren't I still okay? When really this is the new normal and the new okay. And it really takes time to get your head around it. It's taken me a long time to get my head around that. And so when I was in the hospital, the job I was doing at the time was in elderly care, and I used to monitor standards of care in a nursing home. So I kind of went into work mode, as people do when they're grieving, and I wrote down the list of all the things in maternity throughout my whole journey that I thought were really good and things that I felt could be improved. One of those things was the doctor and the postmortem consent, which I didn't think was great, which we don't have that issue anymore. And the other thing was the room that I was in. It was a typical hospital room. I'm in a hospital bed. Her dad was on the floor on a yoga mat. It was freezing cold. And I just felt like that separation in that time kind of set a precedent for how we would move forward. And it did, because we broke up probably 7 to 8 months after her death. And I really felt like, had we been able to be together, it would have set a path of how we then continued with that. It was also down to the fact that he as a lot of dads and partners do, they want to be able to fix and protect. It's not a comfortable place to see your partner being that upset. And I think that he struggled with me being upset, but I needed to process it. So I wrote this list and I gave it to the bereavement midwife. And I said, I don't know if you're going to do anything with this, but I just needed to do it for myself. And she came back to me a couple of weeks later and said, I've been looking at your list and I want to talk to you about the room. I said, okay. And she said, we've been trying to get a bereavement suite. This is back in 2013 when National Bereavement Care Standards didn't exist. And actually bereavement care, there wasn't a lot of bereavement midwives in the country, as many as there are now. And I said, okay. And she said, we just haven't been able to raise the funds to do it, but I acknowledge everything that you've said. And I said, don't worry, I'll get you the money. And then honestly, so I thought, how am I going to get the money to open a suite in a maternity hospital? But I spoke to two of the mums at school who'd been there when I'd gone into labour, and they said, we want to help you do it. And so we did a walk of Hadrian's Wall. I lost a few toenails, but we made over £13,000. So that was worth it. And so the year later in 2014, we opened Jada's room at Queen Charlotte's and Chelsea Hospital. So the same room that I gave birth in was transformed into the bereavement room called Jada's room. And I never expected them to call it Jada's room. I thought it would be the butterfly room or something like that. It was in that moment when I saw her name on the door that I realized now what this journey was about and what her legacy is, and that I have the power to do that for her. She was here, she existed for 41 weeks, and she has the right to be able to make her mark. Sorry, I might get a little bit upset there. And so I realized that I can use this and I can channel my grief in a really positive way, because it would have been devastating to me if her death had not mattered and not meant anything. I needed it to mean something. So we opened the room, and that was when I really got to work with Jacqueline's Uncle Bent. At the time, she was the lead midwife at Imperial. She then, you might have known her, most people listening might know her as the chief midwife for England. She's now the chief midwife of the world, I like to say, at the WHO. But I worked with her quite closely, and she said to me one day, you'd be a really good midwife. And I said, well, it's funny, Jackie, because actually I did want to do it years ago after I had Mia. But, being a young mum, I needed to work. I couldn't really go off to university. And I said, but I really do think I want to do it. And she said, okay. So I did my access course. I went off to King's. I started at King's in 2015. And I walked in and I said, I just want to check when the session is about stillbirth, because I had one 2 years ago. I told them I felt I needed to. And they said, well, don't worry, because it's not until your second year. And I was like, actually, that's a bit of a problem, because I think we need more than one lecture in a second year. And they said, yeah, actually, we think you're right, but we're not really sure how to do this. So I said, well, would it help if we started with me just coming and telling my story to people? Because I think that really is so powerful when people can hear your story. And they said, yeah, okay, let's do that. And then it kind of evolved into what it is now. And I created the training package in my first year. And I said, I've written this package. I don't know what you think of it, but it covers everything from antenatal, intrapartum, postnatal, community, grief, mental health, postmortem, global impact, antenatal diagnosis, and how people manage that in terms of termination for medical reasons. And it's everything. And they said, okay, great. And now we have that still going 10 years later, and we teach in the first, second, and third years. Because yes, the first year is about normality and you're observing, but actually, if you're in a situation where you have a stillbirth or a really traumatic situation, you're being exposed to it, but you're not having the learning and the knowledge and the support in university to be able to help you with that. And I think it's important that students get that. So I'm really, really happy that that's still going. And I love everybody at King's, Jan Bowden and Sam Bassett, for really getting behind me and supporting me with that, and supporting the students because they recognise the need for it. So I finished my qualifying. I stayed at Imperial. I became a bereavement midwife. And then it was a real turning point on my first day in the numbers, as we say, no longer supernumerary. And I walked in and I could see a bereavement case on the board, and I thought, oof. And I didn't get assigned anybody, and I thought, am I going to be doing the resuscitator checks? I mean, what am I going to be doing today? And she said, no, I want you to go and look after women in Jada's room. And I was like, it's my first day in the number. She's like, yeah, you're the best person to do it. And I did. And it was like full circle moment for me. I remember standing there looking at the door with her name on the sign and thinking, I was just lost for words. Like, I can't believe I'm in this situation, but I know that I'm meant to be here. I think I bring something to the role, and I'm not one of those people that says you have to experience this to be able to do the job. That's not what I'm saying. But I think that I'm able to recognize in those moments things that I saw in myself. I remember lying there when I first got told the news when I was in labour, just feeling completely lost and really vulnerable. And the bereavement midwife coming in, and I always say that she just kind of scooped me up. Her name is Jane Scott. A lot of people in bereavement will know her. And Jane came in and she scooped me up. And I thought, that's what I want to be for somebody. And I know that I can be that for somebody. And so I'm able to recognize quite quickly when somebody is in that moment. And I had it recently with a woman who just didn't want to talk to me, wanted everything to go through her partner and her mum. But there are some things that we do need to hear from mum. We need to have her consent and hear her opinion and her choice on things. And I don't really talk about my story too much. If I need to, it's only because I'm trying to connect with her to let her know that she can trust me and I understand. And I said to her, I told her what had happened with me. And for 2 days, she hadn't spoken to me. And then she turned around and she said, I'm so grateful that you said that, because I just felt like everybody was coming in saying, we understand. And how can you understand? And so I feel like I'm able to bring something to the role which is really, really truthful and authentic in that moment with that mother, because I really understand what they're going through. In my role as a bereavement midwife, our role is really to advocate for the women in terms of the choices that they want to happen moving forward once they've received the news that their baby has died. We talk to them about induction process because they may not know what's going to happen. We guide them through funeral, post-mortem choices. But my job really is, I always call myself like, I'm the coordinator of everything that's going to happen moving forward. If you need anything at all, let me be that person. So if she has an issue with her job, for example, and she needs time off, I will help them with that. And so I guess I do the role because it's a way for me to give back. It's a way for me to make something positive out of Jada's death. I feel that I bring something that the women and the families appreciate because I can truly understand what they're going through. I would love to do more for the education side, but I think I'm so busy in my role that it's a tricky one, because I want to be able to share this and get the next generation and get that awareness and that education for everybody and all the midwives coming into it. So maybe if there's anybody out there who would like to do something to help me with that, I'd bite your arm off, because I think it's so important. I think that we talk a lot about standards for bereavement care and we only get one chance to get it right, but actually where's the investment in education for our midwives if a lot of people are only getting one session in their second year? That isn't really balancing with what you're saying in terms of the importance of bereavement care. And I think if the government is serious about wanting to improve standards, they need to kind of put their money where their mouth is and invest in education, because really I'm not in the business of setting anybody up to fail. I want everybody to come in feeling fully equipped. And if we're saying that that's how important it is, then we need to really focus on bringing people into the role and giving them that good support and foundation to be able to give good care to people. I guess I don't know what the next steps are for me. I feel like I just want to be a bereavement midwife forever now. As Sue said, I did go off. I did go into the senior management world. I had a lot of experience, obviously, in management and governance when I worked in elderly care, which I brought to the table being a midwife. And I think sometimes people say, "Oh, she's climbing up the ladder," and that wasn't it for me. I had the skill set to be able to do the job, and that's as simply as I can put it. But actually, I've realized this year I had to take some time off to have knee surgery. And none of us ever really get to have time off work, but it really made me stop and think. I stepped off the hamster wheel and I said, actually, what is important to me? What's going to make me happy? And maybe Mia leaving was a catalyst for that as well, because now I'm not just the mum that I've always been. I've now got time to think about what do I need now. And I thought, what was the happiest time that I've been as a midwife? And that was being a bereavement midwife. And so I stepped down from the Band 8 role this year. And everybody's saying, you're giving up your Band 8. And it's not about the banding, it's about my mental health and where do I feel like I'm best placed? Where can I give the most? And where do I feel I can make the most difference? And that might be to the 250 women I can look after rather than the thousands because I've written a new guideline. I just felt like this is more important to me. This is what means something to me. And so I came back to bereavement, and I don't think I'm ever going to leave now. Somebody said to me, the consultant that looks after me, actually, I bumped into her and she said, I just think you should become a consultant midwife next. And I was like, no, I just want to stay in my lane and do my thing. And yeah, this is where I'm good. This is where I feel I make the most difference.
Wow. That's a real testament to you as a midwife, Lauren. And thank you for sharing your story
Thank
and
you.
Jaden's story as well. And how special to have a room that's got her name on. That's really special. I mean, actually, I was thinking as you were talking, especially as you were talking about having been at senior management and then realized what was really important. I think that's such an important step because it might feel like I mean, everyone probably thought was saying to you a backward step, but actually it wasn't
It didn't
at
feel
all
like that.
because you're
No, and
doing what
it
is
still doesn't
your
feel like that.
heart. It's your heart, isn't it?
Yeah.
Heart and soul. But I mean, I wouldn't disengage from the idea of consultant midwife because why not be a consultant midwife in bereavement midwifery?
I
Bereavement.
mean, I don't know if those roles even exist. And this
Then,
is
well,
another.
goodness gracious, you made everything else exist. You can do that. And in that way, I mean, I was thinking about the education because you're absolutely right. I mean, it's because I know as a teacher that in some universities you get a lot on bereavement. I think you get more
Yeah,
than we used to do.
yeah,
But in some
definitely.
universities you don't get very much.
Yeah,
And it's very dependent on the teaching team and what their experience,
yes,
what their passion is, how much
yeah,
is focused on it.
yeah.
Especially,
I also think though, so a lot of bereavement training, when you look at the content, is about memory making, communication. And that's because these training sessions are provided by charities and they don't have clinical within their charity. So they don't have that kind of remit to teach
yeah,
clinical
yeah.
bereavement care. And so there's a limitation on where do you go, who facilitates that training then, because we need to have the clinical aspects. And so
Absolutely.
that's a gap in the market as well, I think.
Yeah. And I think, well, my personal experience has been doing continuing education with students and with midwives working as a group
Yeah.
with a teacher and a psychologist. And that way you can unravel
Mm,
a lot of the cycle. Because when you were describing the sort of feelings and sort of the steps that you were taking psychologically, huge,
yeah,
huge thing.
yeah, yeah,
And then you can't, and I think there's a temptation for some and to have a ticky box, right? We've done the
yeah,
communication,
definitely.
we've done the records, we've done this. Because
Yeah.
for all of us dealing with loss and death, and if we
Mm,
haven't dealt with a death in our own history one time, that all comes
mm,
bubbling up.
yeah,
The
yeah,
easiest way is just quickly ticky, and it's done. But thank you so much, Lauren, for
exactly.
sharing your story and your expertise. I foresee
Thank you.
great things. But also, there's a few questions coming through. So thank you, audience, for coming through with the
Okay.
questions. Um, there's a lot of comments. Valentina, hi, Valentina says, so emotional. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. Barbara Julian says, thank you. You are a blessing. I think she's absolutely.
Oh,
Barbara, you're
thank you,
right.
Barbara.
And Pat, you're such an inspiration. Mira Kinnaird, thanks for sharing such a powerful story. And then Francesca Gosling, thank you for sharing, Lauren. You're such an inspiration. And then Sarah Abigail.
Francesca is my friend from King's. We trained together.
Oh, wow. How lovely.
I didn't pay her.
You should, I think you might be blushing. I think you might be blushing. And we've got Sarah Abigail. Thank you for sharing your experience and for all you do for women and birthing people. You're an inspiration. And then Nikki, and she says, "Hi, Lauren. I'm a third year student at King, so have been lucky enough to have heard you speak twice now. The sessions were invaluable to my learning. They heartfelt, inspirational, educational. The sessions were different, and the way they were delivered fit perfectly with how we'd grown as students. Will we see you again this year? Hope, really hope so."
Yes.
Nikki, yes. Lauren says yes. Excellent. And then Elizabeth Shirley Alugan, you're a very inspiring and strong woman. Well,
Thank you. It's
strong.
funny because people say that and I don't feel that. People always say you're so brave going back to the place where it happened and you're so strong. And actually, it is just a point of survival because I think that I had some very, very, very dark moments.
Mm,
And I read this book called Levels of Life by Julian Barnes. And in that book, he said it's about his grief following the death of his wife. But there was
okay.
something so poignant that was a real turning point for me in terms of my grief and how I dealt with things. And he said, if I were to take my own life, who would be there to make her memory live on? And I read
Oh,
that and I
wow.
thought, oh,
Yeah,
yeah, actually, you've got
gosh.
a point. If I do this, who's gonna be there to make sure that people remember her? And
Yeah.
that was such a turning point for me that now I don't feel brave. I just feel like I'm doing this for her. I am doing this for me. I'm doing it for Mia because it was so important for me
Yeah.
as a mother that I teach Mia about life and death and how you have choices in terms of how you respond to that. And you can gain back some control.
Mm,
And you can have a really, really sad, horrific, traumatic thing happen to you in your life, but you can turn that around into something that's really, really beautiful in memory of that person,
mm,
to honor that person.
mm,
And it was really important to me that I taught Mia that,
mm,
and that I can help other parents with that as well, and teach them that in time, it's taken me a long time to get to this point. And
mm.
I really realized the change a few months ago. I was in Tesco. At her funeral, we played Stevie Wonder, Isn't She Lovely? That was the song that was dedicated to her. So anybody who wants to play that after this, feel free. And it came on in Tesco. Tesco's plays music now. And it came on. And usually I just stop and just burst into tears. And this year I was just like, oh, I can sing along. And I really felt a change in the way that I responded to that. And that was a kind of symbol of how I've changed as well.
Yeah.
And I don't want to use the word acceptance because I feel like if I say I'm accepting, then I've given up the fight of saying this still isn't okay. It's not okay that it happened. And I don't want to accept it, but I'm at ease, I guess is the right word. I'm at ease with the position that I'm in,
Yeah.
I think is the healthiest way that I can say it.
Yeah. I think that's a really good way of describing it because and I think the other thing that it becomes temptation is, the levels of grief and you're going to get to this point and that point.
Yeah, yeah,
Humans just don't do that.
yeah,
We can skip and jump and the end point,
yes,
which is always going to be different at different times, isn't it?
yeah,
It's like you're saying it. Some women would say, I've reached acceptance, but I think you're at ease is very much you,
yeah,
isn't it?
yeah,
From the work
definitely.
that you've done, which is
Yeah,
fabulous, really fabulous. I mean, I love
thank you.
the first year. You should have got a distinction, as I expect you did, for doing a whole learning package. Because how wonderful is that?
Well, they very kindly gave me this medal called the Jelf Medal that nobody outside Kings will know what that is, but the Jelf Medal is awarded to one student in the whole of nursing, mental health,
Oh,
everything,
wow.
for their kind of contribution. And I think it was that training package that really helped me to get that.
Wow.
And also as the students, we did this marathon, we did another fundraising exercise where, and it was an exercise because we did over a marathon on the hottest day of the year. It was 35 degrees. And we raised money for Jada's Room, for Remember My Baby, and for Syrian mothers who
Oh,
were giving
wow.
birth in refugee camps at the time. And we
Yeah.
did a marathon of all the hospitals that we worked at as students, down from the Prue in deep South London, all the way through the hospitals, King's, Lewisham, Tommy's, St
Oh,
Mary's,
my
Queen
word.
Charlotte's. And we did a 28-mile journey that day. And so I
Isn't
guess
that
those
more than the
things
marathon? Isn't that two
probably,
miles?
I'd like to think
Whoa.
so. But whenever I go to King's, I always teach the students, you can be a student and you can make a change. You don't have to wait until you're qualified.
No,
You don't have to wait
absolutely.
until you're a senior manager or the chief midwife. You can
No,
do it now. And if more of us did that, if more of us said, actually, I'm the person that can make the change, imagine what changes we could do. And so
absolutely.
I'm a big advocate for people kind of
Gosh.
standing up and doing things to make things better.
Wow, that is you're going to get even more marvelous comments now. Oh, now Sandra says thanks for this. I'm really interested in the education pack. P.S. I'm a bereavement midwife in Malta. Well, welcome, Sandra,
Oh,
midwife in
Sandra. Hi,
Malta.
Sandra.
Wow, I think you'll need to just get in contact with Lauren. I have to
Yeah,
say,
you do.
Lauren is wonderful because if you get in touch with you, she gets right back and is very happy to share. It's fabulous. I mean, I don't know if it's got a copyright on it, the package, but the kind of
I just, to be honest, I haven't because I did question that, but I
yeah,
thought I know the motivation of why I'm doing this. If somebody wants to take it and make money, then that's their motivation. That's up to them. That doesn't really affect me because I
no,
know why I'm doing
yeah,
it.
yeah,
And if it
absolutely.
gets out there through any channels, then I'm happy with that.
Yeah, because I mean, sometimes the print, and in fact, it's like, and I don't know, Sandra, if you're Maltese by background, or and how the maternity services work out there. Maybe you need to come on and talk on the maternity, and we can get to know
Yeah.
more. But the thing about any learning package about practice is it's important to kind of look at what the package, where it came from, and then look at your
Mm,
own service and what works because
mm,
some of the things, this is why we always say that this is today's UK based. And so
mm,
you can take principles, and I think the listening and the kind of now what is it, scooping up, those sort of principles, I think that's kind of international really, isn't it?
yeah.
Actually, the scooping up. Was
Yeah.
that with physically as well, Lauren? Or psychologically?
No, just totally mentally, just feeling like I just got, yeah, definitely. And actually, I'm organizing a training day for staff at Imperial and in Northwest London
Oh
in
wow.
November. And it's an MDT, so it's maternity, it's A&E, it's peds, gynae, mortuary staff, chaplains, London Ambulance Service, physiotherapists that see women postnatal. I mean, it's everybody. And
Gosh.
we're talking a lot more about how we communicate as a team, cultural impact of bereavement care, and how we can be culturally
Oh
sensitive
gosh,
to
yes.
families. We're
Yeah.
talking about psychological safety. So we've moved away from communication, all the things that we get taught all the time anyway, and we're
Mm.
going a bit deeper with it because I do think those things are really universal to any team, in any department, and in any place of the world. So I think it's really important that we are training together in those subjects.
Fabulous. So is there going to be a different package coming out of this one? I wonder.
Potentially, this training day is run by Teddy's Wish, which is an amazing
Oh gosh.
charity,
Yeah.
which we've partnered with to do the day. So I'm really looking forward to it. Paula Abrahamson's facilitating, so it's going to be brilliant. And
I,
I'm excited to do something a little bit of a different twist on the usual things that we do in bereavement.
I think it's very refreshing. I mean, and as you were talking, is all these different charities often have been set up
Mm.
by bereaved parents, people who
Yeah,
feel wish to make things better, not just to
yeah,
complain or be
no,
angry, but actually make things better for other parents
yeah.
and for staff as well. It's really important.
And the thing for staff is so big. I mean, when you think about For Lewis, Bob and Tracy and the work they've done,
Mm.
I just love them because they really support us. Like they really go above and beyond to help us and the families. They give us things that most people want to be charging for, and we get it for free from them. And they do that because they want to make a difference. And that those charities we rely on so heavily, they are so important for us.
We'll just for the audience, we'll have a bigger list of all these things. I think we've got Sands on the list, but because of the it's been a busy week, we'll just
Yeah.
catch up a little bit. So just keep a watching brief for this. We've got some more comments. Got Juliet Samuel, who is an old friend with us. Hi, Juliet. And she says, Lauren, thank you for sharing. It's inspiring your personal journey as well as your focus and role choice in enabling other mothers who experience a loss. Thank you. And then
Thank
Ola
you.
says, thank you for sharing, Lauren. I went to King's as well and had a bereavement session with you in 2019. And I've been thinking
Oh,
about Jada quite often since then.
oh,
Oh, that's lovely. Where's that pink
thank you.
crystal? With pink
Yes.
crystal, pink quartz.
Get
Beautiful.
those rose quartz out, people.
Yeah, absolutely. And Wemi says, nothing satisfying than doing what you're happy you're doing. Thank you so much for sharing
Mm,
your story with us. And I think that's a really special way of ending the session. And thank you so much for sharing your story.
thank
But
you.
not it's a little bit more, it's more than the story, it's the sort of the whole journey
Mm,
from losing Jada to
yeah,
actually impacting on midwifery practice and on the experience of other bereaved mums and parents and families and friends,
yeah,
because it goes much, much wider, doesn't it?
yeah,
So
it
thank you
does.
so
It
much
is much
for
deeper
making
than that
that.
for me. Mm.
And we only need that recipe, because the other thing that Lauren's been doing is baking cakes also for fundraising. I think it should be Lauren fundraising Petrie. She's been very, very
Maybe I'll
busy.
go into charity work next. I'll be
Yeah,
some kind
no,
of
no, 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 no,
fundraiser.
no,
Yeah.
no, 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 no. You're not allowed to leave midwifery. That's not permitted
Okay, I'm
at all.
staying. I'm staying.
Yeah, good. And we're going to hear more from Lauren. She doesn't escape our clutches, I assure you. She's fantastic. I'd also like to say a big thank you to Angela. Now, Angela is behind the scenes, making sure everything is being recorded nicely. So you can play this again, and you can also maybe share it with colleagues, because anyone who's been watching and listening, this will have had a huge impact on, in whatever the way. So do take the opportunity of sharing with your colleagues. And for those of you who've dialed in who know Lauren, you know as well, and you probably want to watch it all over again. And also thank you to Paul for feeding through the questions. And I should have said, that's why I keep looking away, because I've got two screens, and the other screen gives me the questions coming through in comments. Now, the resources will be available later on the website, and the recording will be available as a podcast, 6 o'clock in the morning on Friday, for those of you who want to go listening on the way to work or running. You might have a little tear in your eyes, a little lump in your throat, I think, from Lauren's story, because it is very emotional, obviously. And it's will also come out in the newsletter next Wednesday for you all. Now, next week, we've got Becoming and Being a Doula with Amanda Hutchison and Trudy Dawson. And with that, we finish our hour. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you same time, same place next week. And thank you again to Lauren for joining us. Wonderful midwife, an inspiration, definitely. Take care.
Thank you.